رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا.
Good afternoon and welcome to Toledo Nation Stand. We are going to start the program with the recitation from the Quran by Qari Haji, and then the translation by our young friend Yusuf Shabazz.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذا سمعوا ما أنزل إلى الرسول ترى أعينهم تفيض من الدمع مما عرفوا من الحق يقولون ربنا آمنا فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين. وما لنا لا نؤمن بالله وما جاءنا من الحق ونطمع أن يدخلنا ربنا مع القوم الصالحين. وما لنا لا نؤمن بالله وما جاءنا من الحق ونطمع أن يدخلنا ربنا مع القوم الصالحين. فأثابهم الله بما قالوا جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وذلك جزاء المحسنين. صدق الله العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. And when they listen to the revelation received by the messenger, thou wilt see their eyes overflowing with tears, for they recognize the truth. They pray, Our Lord, we believe. Write us down among the witnesses. What cause can we have not to believe in Allah and the truth which has come to us, seeing that we long for our Lord to admit us to the company of the righteous? And for this their prayer hath Allah reward them with gardens, with rivers flowing underneath their eternal home. Such is the recompense of those who do good.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful. We welcome our guests and friends here to Toledo Masjid Islam today. And my name is Shamsuddin Wahid. It's a very difficult name, I know, so you can just call me Wahid or whatever curse word you want to. So it's a great pleasure that we're here today, that you take your time out of this very beautiful afternoon to join us for these few minutes. And so before going into the program and introductions, I want to just take a few moments to give a commercial for the mosque. I think I'm allowed to do that. So this mosque is actually historical. It is the first purpose-built mosque in Ohio. In fact, this gentleman here was explaining that he grew up seeing this place built. And so it was built in 1952, 1953 era. And so this is the first built mosque in Ohio, the second or third in the United States. And this building functioned as a mosque until the year 1982, in which the Islamic Center at Perrysburg was built. And so when they built that place, this place closed as a mosque. And for many years it functions, among other things, as the local welfare office until around 3 years ago. My numbers are always bad, so if my numbers are wrong, please blame it on somebody else. And so 3 years ago, alhamdulillah, we were able to to purchase the building and refurbish this building, as you see before you. And so the mosque here, we have a number of programs. We have, for example, we have a free soup kitchen the last Saturday of every month. The head of it is Brother Yusuf Ali, who is upstairs, I believe, who probably doesn't know that we've started yet. We also have a community kitchen. We also have a community night the last Friday of every month. And in addition to that, we have obviously our Friday prayers and our Sunday various studies on Sundays. So the mosque has been attempting to put together a variety of programs designed to reach out to the public, to share our faith, and to educate ourselves and to educate others. And so some of you may recall a couple months ago we had a rather big gathering here that discussed Jesus. The program was called Learning from Jesus, Benefiting from the Messiah, and it was very well attended. This is part of that ongoing process. So we have two speakers with us today. The first speaker her name is Sister Tamra Hosseini, and she's been Muslim for 2 years. And I'll let her talk in a moment. And then the next speaker is Sister Sarah Anjum. She is an immigration lawyer, and she's been Muslim for 10 years, and she wants me to highlight that she is the mother of not 1, not 2, not 3, but rather 4 children. She wanted me to highlight that and emphasize that. So without any further delay, I would invite Sister Tamra Hosseini to please join us. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Tamra Hosseini. I'm kind of new at this, so forgive me if I seem a little nervous. I'll go back to a little bit back in my childhood. I was born here in Toledo, and I come from a family who doesn't have a religious foundation. So I wasn't raised in any type of religious home. The first time I was introduced to religion, I was 12, and it was a friend of mine who stayed next door, and her mom was Pentecostal. So I started going to church then with them, and I asked my father if I could get baptized, and he was like, no. But I did it anyway. At that time, I was I was young, so I didn't know any better, but I felt like God was more important than my father, so I wanted to be saved, and so I got baptized, and then as I grew older, I was like, this religion, I didn't feel it. I didn't have any, I would see people like catching the Holy Ghost and things like that, and it scared me, and I felt empty when I went to church. So I stopped going, just like my family. And then when I got in my 20s, I wanted to revisit religion, so I tried Black Christianity. And to me, that was more like a cult. So I didn't feel comfortable there, and I was introduced to the Nation of Islam after that, and I didn't like how they mixed religion with race, so I didn't feel comfortable there. So, and of course baptism, I tried the Baptist, and again I didn't feel anything. So when I was introduced to Islam, I was introduced to my husband. He told me he was Muslim, and the first thing I thought was, oh no, I don't want to be with him. I was like against Muslims because of 911, and so I thought, no, that's not me. But he seemed so nice and so calm, and he explained to me the different there's different Muslims, like the Sunni, the Shia, Nation of Islam. I didn't know any of that. So by me marrying him, I got a chance to watch him and how he prayed and how he spoke about the Quran and how he just go live his life day to day. And he seemed at peace, no matter what was going on with him. He always had this peaceful part of him, and I was like, wow, and I would watch him pray. Then I started asking more questions, and my father got sick and he passed away. And when someone in your life close to you passes away, you start to think about the afterworld. It's more prominent. So at that time, I was curious, but I wasn't ready. And so one day it was 2011. We were going into Ramadan, and I said I wanted to convert, and I converted. I'm still learning. It's been 2 years. It's a lot to learn being Muslim, but what I like most about being a Muslim is the discipline, and knowing that this life here is just for the second, and what we do here is our test, and what happens here is nothing. It's about the afterlife and about pleasing and living for Allah. So I'm still learning, but I'm so at peace with myself now. I found my religion, I found my home, and that's all I ever really wanted, because I always felt like there's someone higher than us here. There's someone put us here, and we're here for a reason. I didn't know why, because no one would talk to me about religion in my family. So I had to seek it out on my own. The things I've done in my life before Islam, I'm not proud of, but I didn't know. So today, I'm a new woman, and I'm happy, and I feel like I'm going to be okay for the afterlife. As long as I continue to pray, believe in my religion, and do the things that I'm supposed to do the right way, I'm going to be okay. And I would advise anyone who's thinking about converting to research. It's a beautiful religion. It's a beautiful life, and this is our test. So I want to go to Jannah. I want to be there. I want to be able to say, in this world, I did what I could, but I lived my life the way I see fit. The way I see Allah wanted me to live my life. And I have a lot to learn. I still have a lot to learn. I'm not going to sit here and stand here and act as if I don't have, I don't know it all, and I may die and not know it all, but at least I'm here and I'm trying, and I'm at peace with that. Thank you.
I actually grew up in a very religious family. We were Catholic Christians. We had to go to church every Sunday. But as well as religion being important to my parents, and I think, I'm sorry to say to some extent, even more so, being educated was important to my parents. So we had a rule in our house that before school every day we had to watch the news. And that was actually my first introduction to Islam. I remember very clearly, and it's very funny how things can hit you when you're a child. I was 5 years old, and I was watching the news. It was the Gulf War. And there was this Kuwaiti family in their bomb shelter. But the women were wearing hijab, and they were showing where they kept their prayer rugs and where they kept everything that they needed to pray, because that in their minds was what they needed to be okay as they were bombarded with bombs. And for some reason, I was 5 years old, but for whatever reason, this just affected me so deeply. And it affected me so deeply, in fact, that when I went to college, that's what I chose to study. I was going to study Islam. I was going to study Arabic. Now, mind you, when I was a senior in high school, that's when 9/11 happened. And so I think that even just increased my curiosity. Meanwhile, as I grew up, again, following my mother's path of pursuit of knowledge, I learned about many different religions, and I always became curious. I attended several different churches. My parents had a policy to go wherever we wanted as long as we went back to Catholic church on Sunday. But I had serious issues. Most of the other Christian churches were a lot of fun. They had a lot of music, a lot of dancing, but not a lot of faith. It was all Jesus loves you, do what we say, you'll go to heaven, Jesus loves you. But there was no depth to it. There was nothing I could really sink into. And in Catholicism, I had even deeper issues. I remember when I was in 6th grade asking questions about the Trinity, about original sin, things that they just couldn't answer. And I was the naughtiest girl in my class, in that I would not stop questioning. I remember one day they called the bishop on me, that this girl would not calm down. She's just insisting on all these things, and I just couldn't give up. To my surprise, though, when I started college quite a ways away from my family, I did decide to start attending church. And I was really trying to learn more about Christianity. I was really trying to learn more about Catholicism. I was a religion teacher, but my students, now I wasn't a popular religion teacher, so they gave me all the problem students. And they would come to me asking the very same questions that I used to ask about the Trinity, about original sin, about the oneness of God. And I'd give them the answer I was supposed to give them, the answers I'd always been given. And I'd take them out in the hallways when they got their detentions, as they always did. And I would sit with them and I would say, I feel for you because I have the exact same questions and nobody could answer them. My cousin became second, 2 at a time, who was Cardinal Ratzinger. He works in the Vatican. He's a priest there. I go to him with my questions and nobody had any answers for me. And then came Thanksgiving break. And I went home with my parents and we went to church. My parents were very pleased that I chose to go to church when I was on my own. And it came time where the priest makes prayers for the congregation. And he asked us to make a prayer for a specific priest. He said, pray for this priest and pray for the community. And I got suspicious. So I turned to my mom and I said, very loudly in church, Mom, why are we praying for him? And she said, hush. And I said, Mother, why are we praying for this man? And she said, be quiet. And I walked out of church, and that was the last time I ever attended. He was a priest who was caught up in the abuse scandal. He was the priest who baptized me. He was the priest who gave my great-grandfather's funeral. Meanwhile, in Chicago, my other job was working as a crisis counselor for abused women. And what I knew from that work, and what I knew from what I just witnessed, was that the hierarchy of the church was more important than religion. And that was something that bothered me so deeply. For Catholics, if you want to understand the Bible, you go to your priest. If you've committed a sin and you want to confess, you go to your priest. Well, what about God? Where is God in this? I just couldn't get an answer. So I started on a year-long journey of just learning about different religions. And it's funny to look back that becoming Muslim never crossed my mind, even though all I did from dawn to the time I went to bed was study Islam. That was what I was going to school to study, never crossed my mind. This was something from others. This was somehow turning away from my family, my country. This was something weird. So I learned more about other religions, but nothing. I think like most college students, I went to Buddhist meditation. I hung out with my resident assistants who were Greek Orthodox, but nothing was right. One day I realized that I was judging everything by how close it was to Islam and how they felt about Muslims. And yet still I was stubborn and I didn't convert. One day I was sitting in a class, and it was actually on political movements in Pakistan, I think. But the teacher was she wasn't a convert, she was married to a convert. She was a graduate student. We were allowed to ask her anything we wanted. So students started just asking random questions about Islam that day. One of the questions was about my old sticking point, original sin. But she said, well, in Islam, we have nothing like this. You can only be punished for your own sins. How could a just God punish you for something that you had nothing to do with? We don't have anything like this in our religion. And I thought, oh no. They asked about the Trinity, and they said, well, of course, we value the prophet Jesus. He's a prophet of God. He's an important prophet for us. But there's one God. God didn't wake up one day and think, geez, I could use some more of me. Didn't happen. We have one God in our religion. And I thought, good grief, I'm in trouble. After class, I felt sick. I went home and I shot off an email to one of the local mosques. There was a sister there that I had heard of before. She used to be a nun. And I wrote her a list of my 21 grievances against Islam. All the reasons I couldn't be Muslim. I had a roommate 2 years before who was a lesbian. She seemed like a decent person. So what would she say to that? And when I really like to go rollerblading. But see, I broke my elbow rollerblading, and I really need to wear pads when I rollerblade because I'm really clumsy. And if I wear long pants and long shirts, my pads don't fit over very well. So I need to wear shorts and a t-shirt when I go rollerblading. And what does Islam say about that? And what about this whole gender segregation thing? That seems really weird. And I have this friend who wants to become Muslim. She has the most beautiful hair I've ever seen, and she should not have to cover it up. So can I still be Muslim? She actually responded to each of my 21 grievances that same afternoon. And her response, I wish I'd saved it. It was something like, too bad. She's like, in Islam, we have rules. This is the way it is. And I was conflicted. I couldn't join a religion still holding on to my 21 grievances. I didn't want to become a bad Muslim, but I knew that I believed. And feeling very distraught, I fell asleep. And I had a dream, actually. I had a dream in which I can't really give specifics. It was just a dream. So I understood that God was communicating with me, however it happened. And it was, the people that are in your life, I've placed in your life. So listen to me and I'll guide you. And the things that are important to me are important to you because I've made them important to you. So listen to me and I'll guide you. And that was it. I woke up. And I knew then that I would become Muslim. This was in the spring. I was 19 years old. And I converted that summer. I made what, looking back, I believe is a very wise decision. It's something I advise a lot of new converts to do, is I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell my family for about 6 months. I waited until after my grandmother passed to convert because I was afraid it would kill her, the woman that she was. And I knew my parents would see it as an act of rebellion, so I didn't tell them until I could say, what are you talking about? I've been Muslim for 6 months, we've been friends all this time. I think that really eased the blow for them. Everyone's favorite question is, did you convert for your husband? I wish I had a nickel for every time somebody had asked me that question. The simple answer is that nobody can possibly convert for one's husband. If you think of the Shahada, it's belief in God. It's belief in the messenger. You can't believe for somebody else. That negates your belief. So no, I did not convert for my husband, nor did anybody else. But I did meet him about 4 years later, and I will say that really eased relations with my family, to see a nice, normal Muslim family. But this has been a very unexpected path for me, but also a very beautiful path. I always remember those first moments of just sitting in that class and realizing that there is a faith that believes that there's one God. And our religion is simple, and that's what drew me to it. And I think that's the theme that we always have to remember. Next year.
I think I'm going to just sit here and not get back up, I'm feeling lazy right now. Are there any questions from the audience for our two speakers?
Go ahead.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Sister Mary, did it cause issues with your family when you became Muslim?
My aunt, she felt like I had lost myself and was doing everything for my husband, and just like, and then my mother's side of the family, they don't understand at all, and they don't really talk to me as much. Our relationship is kind of strained, but it's okay.
Okay. I think the question can apply to both of you. The first part of the question, how long have you been Muslim? The second part is, what did you do when you get question why a woman in Islam is allowed to marry only one husband, but the did you ever get a good question, answer for that kind of question, if you had this one?
I've had that question, yes. It was one of the hardest part of accepting Islam is the one husband for, I mean, a man can have 4 wives and a woman, actually, Shamsuddin, he counseled me, he helped me to understand very well the reason for that, and I understand now why, and I accept it. I have a sister wife.
And how long have you been a Muslim?
2 years.
Oh, mashallah. May Allah strengthen your iman. Okay. And the answer for your sister, if you, how long have you been a Muslim?
He was for almost 10 years now.
Mashallah. Did you get good answer for some tough questions you had in mind about Islam, criticism of Islam?
I think there's several things we have to remember. First of all, the way there's divine wisdom, Allah is the all-knowing, and then there's our wisdom, which is always, Allah's wisdom, our wisdom. But at the same time, I am a questioning soul, so I do always have to investigate everything, even though at the end of the day, what Allah says is what Allah says. And that's what I'm obliged to follow, whether or not I see the wisdom in it or not. I think the example, and each of us have things that really test us. That's the nature of religion, that's the nature of humanity, that's the nature of the way Shaitan whispers to us. I think that the question of marriage is actually a very simple one. As a mother, obviously you need to know, are these your kids, are you not? You need to know the father of your children, first of all, and just biologically, the only way you can do that is to only have one partner. Again, if you want to look very practically speaking, men in past times, and even today, are generally the support for women. So a woman having to support multiple husbands is simply impractical, whereas a man, as a breadwinner, could presumably sometimes, in certain cases, support many women. And women, particularly in the past, were much more affected by
It's more.
I reversed that. Men would go out and die in battle. The life expectancy for a man today is much shorter, but the life expectancy for women is much longer. And so there was just a surplus of women in the past with no means of support. So it was just a very practical solution to the problem.
Thank you so much.
Remember, it's $500 for each question you ask me.
Anyway.
I take cash, only cash.
Okay. No, I don't use the card. Anyway, I wanted to ask you to explain, I mean, I have a general idea, but I think you should explain to the women why a man can marry a man can marry up to 4 wives. Now, from my understanding is that, for one, in Christianity, they always say in the latter days, there'll be 10 women to 1 man. And I know it's a shortage of men, especially good men, decent men. And also, back in the biblical days, that, men married, I think, another wife to keep some women off the street or for protection. Okay? But also isn't there like a code of ethics? If you do marry another wife, you have to ask your first wife's permission. Now, I did talk to let me finish. I did talk to a Somalian gentleman, and he told me, he said, well, if I married another woman, I wouldn't ask my first wife permission. I said, why? He said, because 9 times out of 10, she's going to say no. But I think with Islam, you have to, when especially a woman, she becomes Muslim, you need to explain to her, what it is, and, some rules and things that goes on in Islam, because everybody does not understand that, And also, I wanted to ask you, what do you think of the chance of polygamy becoming legal here? Because my opinion is, if they legalize gay marriages in some states, I think polygamy should be, that's my opinion, I think it should be legal, because you gay marriage, that's something that's against going the grain of nature. They should legalize polygamy. That's just my opinion, but.
Okay, those are 2 questions. questions, so the answers, so I need $1,000. No charge, I need cash. I need cash. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, the first part of the question, I'm very reluctant to, this is like one of those questions that I wish that he would stay with his sisters and not direct it to me, because I'm prejudiced in the answer. Okay, so, the first part of the question is, I think it has to be understood that polygamy in Islam, first of all, is not that every man is doing it. I think it's the first thing to mention. It's not that every man is has to, or is obligated to do it. It was a social remedy for a particular problem. And what problem was that? That problem was, as Sister Enjum alluded to, and that you actually alluded to also in your answer, in your question a little bit, is when men go to battle, they lose their lives, but they leave behind wives, and they leave behind children. And so, that is if you read the Quran in Surah An-Nisa, chapter number 4, I believe it's verse 5 or somewhere in that neighborhood, if you read that, and he's going to look up to make sure I'm telling the truth. So, if you read that, it's very clear that the context is talking about really the protection of women and children, not for, excuse my language, not for men to be playboys, to be the next 50 Cent or JC or Abdullah Hafiz or something like that. That's the first part of the question. Now, I think I'm going to skip some parts of the question so I don't get in trouble. No, my bodyguards aren't here today. So, I'm going to skip a couple parts of the question and go to the, actually I got to remember now, I should have wrote it down. The second part of the question was about, will polygamy ever be legalized in this country? That is a tough question, but this is not a religious analysis, this is more or less a social analysis. I don't think polygamy will ever be legalized in this country because of the experience of the Mormon community. If we recall, the Mormon community, from Ohio, actually, some of their origins do include places within the southern part of, I think, Kirtland, Ohio, wherein they migrated to the West because in their religion, basically, to have so many wives was a way to guarantee a place in Jannah, essentially. This was one of the reasons they did it. And I think they call it celestial marriages or something like that in their faith. So, the United States government put down that particular movement with force to the extent that now polygamy is illegal in the Mormon religion. And so they have a few breakaway groups they call fundamentalist Mormons who do polygamy, and they live in camps in different places like that. Even with the legalization of gay marriage, I admit, to be fair, I admit it's a kind of a hypocrisy. But at the same time, I'm realistic. I don't think that they're ever going to legalize, gay marriage. I think we need to worry about the concept of marriage in period. Whether it is whatever kind of marriage it is, because in this country, marriage is a failing institution. It is, I believe, 60% of American marriages end in divorce. Oh, the sister is saying it's higher than that. This is why I shouldn't answer the question. Rather than focusing on gay marriage or on polygamous marriage, I think that we should focus on marriage, period, on the preservation of families. So many people are divorced, almost literally, from their families. No people, no relationships with the fathers, no relationship with the with the grandparents, etc. This is a bigger social problem than that of polygamy marriage or gay marriage or whatever. So, in the interest of my own safety, I'll answer the rest of the questions in private about that subject. And I'm going to put the two sisters back on the firing range while I sit back. Thank you very much.
I have a couple of questions actually. When converting to Islam, what tribulations did you face? Or what are some things that was hard for you to give up?
For me, it was the dress. Before I converted, I kept saying I can't cover, and that was one of the main tribulations that I had, covering. And I wasn't a big pork eater before I converted. I used to have to sit at the dinner table for many hours when I was younger because I refused to eat pork chops. It wasn't hard to give that up. So that really wasn't. A lot of people it's pork, and I didn't smoke, I didn't drink. So I did smoke, but I had quit. But the main thing for me was the dressing and polygamy. That was the hard part.
Did you?
I was the fortunate recipient of good advice when I converted. I was never a big drinker, to be honest. Again, my very logical self liked to feel in control. And I was never a hard partier or into drugs or anything. I know those have been struggles for people I've known. The advice that I got when I converted was to slow down. I started myself on a very strict regimen at first of having to redo my prayers again and again and again until I got them perfect, which would take me several hours. And my Quran teacher at the time told me I was banned from doing this. I could pray once a day and that was it. And I said, you're out of your mind. Pray 5 times a day. He said, you don't know what you're doing. Once is sufficient. And same thing with all the things you have to give up, all the things you have to change. Slow yourself down. Make yourself a goal, make yourself a schedule, work towards it slowly. And I took that advice, and everything becomes easy as your faith becomes strong. So everything, I was into ballet, which obviously I had to give up. I was into field hockey, which I needed to give up. But anything that seemed so hard that I just couldn't do at that moment, I put later on. And as my faith was stronger, I no longer felt like I was giving something up that I loved. I was running away from something I then hated because my faith was stronger. And so by following that very sincere advice, I haven't given anything up. I've only come closer to what is dear to me.
Thank you, sisters, for sharing your journey. I'm very much new at this and the novice. But I do understand this, and I was told this by a very learned person. We are all born Muslims. And for whatever reasons, whatever directions our lives take, we are off the path. Your path is very much like mine in Catholic education and the whole thing. So I keep hearing the word convert. And really, I learned the other word, which is revert, which means going back to our original root. And I applaud you both for sharing this all with us on your journey. We're all on some kind of a path, and yours has come to a beautiful, beautiful destination and goal. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah?
I just want to say congratulations, sisters, on your on having enough courage to follow what you knew that you felt was right. A lot of people don't have that, and they end up being in trouble. But I have a question for you, Tamara. I know you have a child. How old is your child? You have more than one?
I have 3.
Have you had any issues with defiance in your children against Islam, and how have you dealt with it?
Well, I have a 24-year-old,
Oh.
and I talk to her and try to get her to convert. Well, I know I'm not supposed to, but I kind of talk to her, and I apologize a lot to her for not raising her Muslim. She just says she's not going to do it. She's never going to do it, but she doesn't look at me as if I'm doing something wrong. She'll tell everyone, "Oh, my mom's a Muslim," and my mom got to call you back. She's praying. She watches me pray, but she just doesn't want to convert. And I said maybe in time. I just keep talking to her and not telling her she has to, but just explaining the religion, like how I should. She I didn't feed her a lot of pork, but my grandfather, well, my father, he cooked with pork, so she loved it, you know. But when she was eating it, I wasn't against it either, so I didn't make her not eat it. I just, you know, but yeah, my younger ones, I have a 12 and a 8-year-old. I'm raising them Muslim.
And how have they been?
My son was very upset in the beginning.
12-year-old?
Yeah. And you know, but now he didn't want to. He liked pepperoni pizza. He's not, you know. And so that's why I used to get him when they pizza. So now I make pizza all the time, but I use turkey pepperoni. And they don't have it in the stores, you know.
Yes, they do. Middle Eastern
Well,
market
no,
sells
I
it.
tell people.
Kroger
Okay.
has it too.
Okay. So, but yeah, you know, that was his, and then he, you know, he's getting to the point where he's into girls a little, so I have to explain to him that that's a no-no, you know. So and he gets a little upset about. He still gives me a little hard time.
Okay, what do you think can be done to help the interests of our children to become more endowed in Islam? Because I have 2 boys. My oldest son, he prays more than my youngest son, and my youngest son went to Islamic school for, let me see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 years in Perrysburg. Then he went to Central Academy, which is ran by Muslims, but it's not Orthodox, because the funding is from the state. And now he attends Horizons, which is ran by Turkish Muslims. Okay, and it was really good going to Islamic Center, but as he got older, I guess he's seen some things in some Muslims, I would say especially women, that he really, and you know, he didn't care for, and then some of the kids in his classroom, especially the girls, he really didn't care for, you know, and he said, it's fine, he likes going to the mosque, but it's fine, but in his opinion, you have to have something else. Just like when I was going to church, my mother made me go to church, but we had activities, and, you know, not just the religion, but the activities drew me and made church more enjoyable. And I'm saying, we have Islam, but you have to have more for the children to do, especially in this day and age. You know, you have to have something like in the church. The churches now, they have parties, they have basketball, they have all kind of stuff. And it's fine to have religion, but I'm saying we need to, you know, what can we do to draw the kids more? You know, you have activities starting out, and I think a lot of it has to do with the men. The men need to outreach more, you know, especially there's a lot of young men that really need some kind of guidance. And, you know, the men, it seems like they're just not doing much more, and especially some of the ones that don't live in the city, some of the Arab men, I'm going to say how it is.
Can they answer the question?
Well, let me finish the question, is what I'm saying. And it's like, you know, some of them are scared to come to the inner city, you know, but you have to outreach to everybody. So what can we do to, you know, to enhance it and make it more appealing to our children, especially the young men?
The children in Islam, I would believe, it said that when they turn a certain age, if they don't pray, beat them. I mean, it's like, this is the life.
Beat 'em?
I mean, well, you know, like, they're supposed, it's not like we should, like, make up things for the kids to come to mind. Kids are kids. They have to do what we tell them to do. Once they turn 18 in this country, they're considered grown. Then, if they want to not continue to be a Muslim, fine. But until then, we are in charge of their destiny. So I don't think we should have to worry about.
But sometimes, especially if you're single and not married. I mean, I've had men in my life, positive influences, like my brother, he's been an influence. He has some other people, Uncle Hafiz, and some other people, you know, and one of the people that had the most influence on my son was his grandfather, and he's not Muslim, he's a Christian minister, but he was very dominant to the point to make him, you know, do what he needs to do to go to school and with the discipline part. But I think that's a role that all the men should take, as you know, it takes a village.
Yeah, but like he was saying, we're all born Muslim.
Right, we are.
When I went to Africa, and when I went to Africa, there's kids as young as 4, they would come in and pray. It's like how you raise them. If they're raised to be Muslims, they're going to pray. You know, it's just part of their life. You know, it's not something that's forced upon, but if you have to, you know, like me, my kids wasn't raised Muslim, so I'm making them pray, you know, I'm making them live the life, because that's how we were supposed to be. So it's not, I don't think our mosques should be responsible for our children. We are responsible for our children.
I don't agree with that.
I'd like to add something to answer here, the last part of the question. Actually, right now, some Islamic centers in Toledo make it really appealing and more of the social activities and entertaining. Right now, at this moment, there is now the first picnic of Al Medina Community Center. It starts at 1 o'clock. It will be like until 5 or 6. You can join them if you like today. And keep looking for the activities of the Islamic centers in Toledo, specifically the Al Medina Community Center. They have a lot of social activities for the youth and for young kids. You can just keep looking and you will find something will make your son probably happy with the Muslim activities done by Islamic centers.
Let me interject myself in here a little bit. I think that all the mosques in general recognize this, because I have conversations with people in different messages. I think that all the mosques recognize the need to make the Islamic life appealing and interesting to the children. I think everybody here recognizes that, or in the Muslim community recognizes that, and you know, with various levels of success, tries to figure out ways to deal with it. In the case of this particular mosque, you know, we have people, but you know, the kids are not around that much. Maybe on the holidays, on Fridays, like the Easter holiday or Memorial Day or Christmas or something like that, people bring around their kids on a Friday that's, you know, connected to the holiday. And we recently started, you know, things here to try to make it interesting. We have a community night the last Friday every month. I mentioned it before you came. You know, we have a community night the last Friday every month. We have, you know, games here and the PlayStation or whatever that thing is. And you know, we've been doing that for a few months now, and everybody here enjoys themselves. And we've recently started even like you know, somewhat of a Sunday school for, you know, for the kids is really what there's a couple of people who come. So the point is that, you know, we're trying, but we need your participation. You know, why should the imams waste their gas money to come and nobody show up? You know, so you know, the responsibility is on everybody. You know, the Quran says 4 times. 4 times, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى, that no soul bears the burden of another soul. I cannot raise your children, neither can you raise my children. We can help each other, but at the end of the day, you know, no one can raise my children except myself. And none can raise your children except yourself. So at the end of the day, we can keep blaming other people, but we have to start looking at ourselves and figuring out how to deal with the issues, you know, ourselves, rather than blaming another
I don't think
person
she's
or
blaming other people.
I know that, but I'm just saying that at the end of the day, we have to start looking at our own activities, our own efforts, rather than saying it is this, you know, this particular entity, this particular organization, and so forth. Oh my goodness. All these are to her, right? Not to the question. Okay, good. He has a gun, actually, so be careful about the question.
Gentlemen.
I also have another question, like, when you first converted, as well as teaching your kids, how do you teach your kids to deal with the prejudices, and how did you deal with the prejudices when you converted as well? Because a lot of new converts, that's kind of one of the bigger things they have to deal with as well. So, have at it.
My son, he got into a fight once because of, I came up to the school and someone said something to him, and that's how he is. He's very, like, hyper. So I had to explain to him and tell him that, you know, to not let people, you know, get to him like that, because, and you know, you just talk to him, and it was new, and so he was like a little upset with me too, like why do you have to dress like, you dress, and but he was 10 then, and now he's 13 and well, going on 13, and he understands more. So it just takes time. You just have to be patient, And with me, I didn't really have I'm a really introverted person now. I don't have a lot of friends, and the friends that I have now, they're Muslims, and I just like hang with my family. So I don't really. And when people see me out, on the streets, and they give me that look, hey, that's give me the look. It doesn't bother me.
I think as far as children go, and this is also in response to the last question, the best way to teach children is by example. So by modeling how you want your children to respond to incidents is the best way to teach them, in my opinion. We can spill a lot of breath, but as we know, talking to children, most of that is wasted, unfortunately. As far as myself for dealing with prejudice, I think just my career and my nature, perhaps, I'm out in the community a lot. So I think I actually face more than a lot of my friends, just from conversations. But my attitude towards it, and it's exactly what I do tell my children, is if that's all they have to attack you for is your faith, that's a really beautiful thing. If your character is such that they're not attacking you for that, and your actions are such that they're not attacking you for that, and the way you carry yourself is such that they're not attacking you for that. If all they have left to throw at you is your faith, the most beautiful thing about you, the thing that will get you paradise, if that's what they want to combat you with, that's all right. So it can sting a little bit, but then I just stop and I think that, geez, if that's all they've got, alhamdulillah, and I pray that that's all they have.
Yeah, it's a question before. Actually, how did you, because you said, how do the kids get that negative views or learn the negative views about Muslims, about Islam? Do you remember is that something taught by the families or by a school or by the media? The reason I'm asking this question, I give a lot of tools in the Islamic Center, and this very much, I'm asking the people, they have a very negative views about Muslims. And it's not necessarily because they are bad or something, no, because they don't know. So do you remember how do you get that negative stereotype views about Islam, or what should we do as Muslims to overcome that?
Media has a lot to do with it. When they go to school and 911, my son was just 1. He was born in 2000, but it's their history, so they learn about it. So when he started going to school, they automatically start teaching them about what happened in 911, and then anything that goes on with the Muslims in the other countries, or somebody bombs something and then the Muslims have something to do with it. All of that, to me, is the negative, and it's like any other religion. Christians, they don't say, oh, that Christian did this. It's not like they're blaming the religion when the Christian does something, but when something happens and that person is claiming to be a Muslim, then it's not even about the crime. He's a Muslim. So the kids, when my son even said someone called me a Taliban once, and he was ready to fight, and I was like, just leave it on. But I think that's the main thing, the media, how they portray Islam and Muslims.
Okay, another question for you. You said you have grievances about Islam before you became Muslim. Did you have a good answer for those grievances, or you overcome all of them?
I overcame them. No, nobody was able to give me a good answer, and I wish they would have. But I think as I've gone on and I've learned more about my faith, I've been able to answer those grievances for myself.
Can we have some of your answers? Did you write those somewhere? I'm really interested in those, because I get a lot of these questions in the tools, and definitely I need someone who went through them.
Well, gosh, I'd be writing a book. These are all very, very good, very complex questions. I think my grievance, I struggle a lot with gender relations first becoming Muslim, because it's something that's very different in American culture than it is in Muslim culture. And I think as far as Muslim culture goes, we have to remember to be reasonable and be rational. You meet a lot of Muslims who either don't care or they're just downright silly in their interactions. So we're supposed to be an ummah who has a middle path. So I think that my first answer was God wants us to be reasonable. The second answer was something I heard once on a khutbah, was that in America, to quote-unquote behave, to avoid so much of the toxicity that's out there, pregnancy without being married, 1 in 3 American women at any given time is in an abusive relationship. Gosh, I mean, I was in college when I wasn't Muslim, being catcalled when you're walking down the street, being made to feel as if you're less of a human being. So to behave in American culture, you have to be somebody who has all the strength from within. And that's exhausting to always have to be a strong person every moment of the day. Well, in Islam, we make it easier. We ask people to be strong. We ask people to lower their gaze. But we also structure our society in such a way to make it easier. So we don't have mingling for no reason. Well, that you're not going to have construction workers calling at you because you're not going to be hanging, or you're not going to be hanging out in a bar together in a potentially compromising situation. You're not giving the construction workers anything to gawk at, so therefore they're not going to gawk at you. And it's their responsibility to keep themselves in line, and it's your responsibility to show yourself in a way that demands respect. So yeah, it's logical. It's a logical religion, and that's, I think, such a beautiful thing about it.
I don't know whether this would bring any clarity or not. It does in my mind, but I'm not very good at this. I'm old enough, older than anyone in the room, to remember a very famous boxer by the name of Cassius Clay from Kentucky. And early on, he was to be drafted into the Army of the United States and to be sent over to Vietnam, as he put it, to kill little brown-skinned people. And he said, I'm not going to do it. And he became a Muslim. And he said, I will not kill. I will stand for life. Now, there's two things about it, and it goes back to one of your questions about young people and what their goals are. Here's a man who was a millionaire, and he gave it all away. They took his license to box away from him. They persecuted him in America. He was the best champion there was, and yet they persecuted him. He was a Muslim being persecuted in the 1960s in this country. Many people never heard of a Muslim. I didn't at that time. I was going to the Catholic Church down here and going to Central Catholic High School down the block. I didn't know what a Muslim was. So the exposure of Islam to America is pretty new. It's not that old. Well, it's as old as me. That's pretty old, isn't it? But what I'm saying is that here you had a man stand up and said, you know what? My faith is Islam. He was a reaper. And I'm going to put my career on hold. I'm going to walk away from all that money because he believed in Allah. Now, here's the point. There's many, many young people who are brought to very good careers in boxing. I don't know whether you're all boxing supporters, but I'm a big boxing fan from years ago. There was many, many young kids that followed his lead. They boxed in the Police Athletic League here in Toledo, 14, 15 years old, and Muhammad Ali was responsible for that. And the same thing in their schools. Right now, you've got one of the best basketball teams in the city at the mosque over on Alexis Road. So, you know, there's always a role model that we can choose. As far as the downside, what do we hear that's bad about Islam? There are always people out there who are having a bad day, and their mission is to spoil your good day. And that's what the media does. That's what the people do around us, and we just have to be strong and not allow that to happen.
Not to mention, good news doesn't sell.
That's it. That's it. That's true. You know, we could really pay a lot more attention to today's talk here if somebody blew a bomb out in front of the thing. Just a big firecracker out on Bancroft Street. Now, yeah, we'd all hear about that. Your brother.
Sister Julie, you have a question?
Yeah, it's now about children. The question is, how do you explain to a grandfather who raised you all your life, who gave you anything you wanted, asks you, what did I do wrong?
No, she's not lying, that happened.
Oh, I'm not lying, yes.
He's atheist, for
Yeah,
one.
he's atheist and he
So-
doesn't like Arabs or Muslims, so, and he... So, yeah, so how do you explain and look him in the face without making him stroke out an explanation and saying, what did I do wrong?
What does Islam mean to you? Why did you become Muslim?
Actually, it was when I was married to my ex-husband who introduced me to Islam. I was stubborn, didn't want to have anything to do with it. Then a few years after we divorced is when I started thinking about converting, which I just converted November of 2012. So how do I explain to a man who gave me everything I needed, how do you explain to him you didn't do anything wrong?
Look him in the eye and tell him everything you did right. Tell him everything that Islam means to you. Tell him everything good that Islam has brought you. And it's likely not to convince him. Honestly, I have a friend who's been Muslim for many years, whose mother calls her every day and asks what she did wrong. And every day she tells her everything she did right. And that became their new normal.
Because that's the hardest thing for me. Where doing everything else, I'm just stubborn. I'm just going to have to ease into it. But the hardest thing for me is I don't want to disappoint the man who raised me since I was 6 months old. And I'm 31 years old now.
I've never seen, I used to lead a study circle for converts, and I've never seen a family not come around. I've seen it take a very long time. But the importance is to treat him with respect. This is somebody who's basically a parent to you. So give him all the respect that a parent deserves. Treat him very, very, very well. Exceptionally well. Follow him, do whatever he tells you to do, except forsake your religion. And tell him everything your religion means to you. And at that point, you've done your duty in front of Allah. And that's the best you can do.
Maybe we should put her with the panel here.
My question is really short. Did you have any theological issues with Islam before you converted? And if you did, how did you resolve it?
Repeat the question.
Did you have any theological issues? Like you said that you had issues with gender relations, and you had similar issues, but was there anything theologically in Islam that you had issue with at first, and if so, how did you resolve it?
Again, I was very, very fortunate. It must be because I'm a weak person. I was very fortunate in how I came to Islam. I came through Islam through books. So I had 1,400 years of history that I was studying. So I'd seen historical debates over theology. So I came to it from a very academic standpoint that I think allowed me to really understand the theology, which I think a lot of misunderstandings come from people preaching who don't have a solid understanding of the faith or don't know how to express that understanding well. So by knowing Islam before I knew Muslims, I think I was able to avoid a lot of that. I jokingly and with exasperation frequently say that had I known Muslims first, I never would have converted.
That is very much true.
I wanted to ask her a question. First, I want to make a comment. By you being something, you were Muslim at first, you were Catholic. Okay. Do you think that being a different religion helped you in your foundation in Islam? And what I'm saying is because I was a Christian, raised in a Baptist church, then I went to the Apostolic church, and to me, Apostolic, they're very, when I say religious, they believe in fasting and praying, which as the Baptist church didn't really teach that. And I'm saying, being in the Apostolic church, it really helped give me a foundation as far as trying to develop a relationship with God, and it helped me with the fasting and praying. So I was wondering, by you being a Catholic at first, did that help you with your journey towards Islam? As far as did it do anything to help you?
I think it did. I think it did in that when I stopped being Catholic, I had to
Mhm.
sit and look at if there was anything from that tradition that I wanted to still hang on to.
Okay.
I found church terribly boring. So I was happy to let that go. I did not go through that crazy I have no religion stage though, because I still felt that there was a God, and I felt that there were certain things with it. So I was kind of down to Fitra at that point. I knew there was a God. I knew that just some things just seemed wrong. You know, right and wrong. I think it's
Right.
kind of ingrained in us. So those were things that when I encountered Islam then, I was able to recognize it as the truth. So the things that Islam shares with Christianity were immediately appealing to me. And the things that it doesn't share, I realized were superior in the truth.
Okay. I'm going to ask a very common question that probably gets asked of every woman in Islam. But what do you feel the status of women in Islam is, and what your expectations as a woman in Islam is, versus the Western point of view that women are second-class citizens in Islam?
I think that's another myth. Yeah, and I thought that too. I used to see Muslim women and feel sorry for them. But it's not. From what I'm learning, is we're equal. It's not like how I thought it was. You know, the reason for the separation for prayer is because we're supposed to be focused on Allah. So when we you know, that's what a lot of my family members feel like I'm oppressed, and I understand why they feel that way because they don't know, they don't understand, and but we're still able to go to school, work. It's not like we have to, you know, do what our husbands tell us to do. That's not how it is. We have to respect our husbands just like any other person. We're just Muslims, so. I don't feel like I'm oppressed or I'm in a relationship or that's not treating me with respect and dignity. I feel like I'm very much respected and loved and valued, more so than any other relationship I was in. So, you know, Muslim men are providers, and you know, being a Muslim woman to me is like if we don't want to work. And our husband is responsible for us. You know, we have that choice. You know, and so I was able to go to school and graduate while my husband worked, took care of the financial responsibility. If I hadn't met him, I feel like that orphan wife, that orphan woman. You know, a lot of times when I think about my life before him, because I had to work full time, take care of my kids by myself, and there was no room for school. Now that I'm married and Muslim, he works, take care of the family. I graduated with my associates, going on to get my bachelor's, and I'm relaxed. I don't have to worry about, I got to work full time. There's no room for school to grow. So I'm able to grow more now than ever before.
Can I just make a comment? Boy, this is interesting. Thank you, Imam Wahid. This is wonderful. When I grew up in the Catholic Church, women wore head coverings. They wore gloves. They were very, very modest. They were expected to be. My grandmother and my mother dressed like that. Now, what we have is we have a church in transition, which is what America is. America is progressing. They call it progressing. So now you can see a gal with a miniskirt, you know, and whatever in church today, and it's accepted. Does that make it right? I don't believe so. There's many people who criticize the Catholic Church because it's not moving fast enough and becoming more modern enough. It's slow. It's one of the slower ones. But Islam retains the value of hundreds of years. And that value is sustaining the religion, the faith. So I think it's, for me, that's the beautiful part. Just because everything gets modern and, you know, boom, all this stuff does not make it better. It kind of defeats it makes women sex symbols so that every guy in town is looking at this girl and saying, wow. I think that we're on the right track by going back to the old value and holding on to it. This is an old man talking, so if I make sense, fine. If I make sense to me, fine. If you don't care, say, I don't care.
You wanted to answer that question?
Well, in Islam, every individual, man and woman, has rights and responsibilities. And women's rights in Islam become a problem in the same circumstances in which men's rights may become a problem. We're taught in Islam to only look out for our own responsibilities, to not demand rights upon those around us, but to be so terrified of fulfilling the rights of everyone around us. When everyone's so worried about pleasing Allah, the woman ends up being treated like a queen. I mean, really, our rights as written by Allah are so great, and yet, as a corollary, and there has to be a corollary, the man is also treated very well because we're so concerned about not forgetting about any of his rights over us. Now, when there becomes a problem of women's rights, and you can see this unfortunately in some Muslim countries today, is when the men are worried only about their own privileges and not about the women's rights over them. And a woman can be oppressive to a male in the same circumstances. So as long as we're worried about fulfilling our responsibilities to Allah and to those around us, women in Islam are treated wonderfully, as should be the men.
And then a lot of other, sometimes the religion and the culture gets confused. You know, what's expected from the, Islam, like in Africa, there's a lot of oppression for the women there, but I don't feel it's the culture. It's more so the culture than the religion. So, and sometimes that gets confusing, you know, and people just blame the religion and not the culture.
Yeah, because I find even when I was searching for religion, that was the hardest thing I had to face with Islam. Like, I didn't want to be subordinate or a second-class citizen. I wanted to be an equal, and so it was a hard concept for me to face. So.
Yeah, I have a comment maybe to part of the answer for the question, or her grandfather asking him what's wrong with us, we provide with everything, and why left us and became Muslim. Actually, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball, ex-basketball, wrote a book, and I believe he has answered a question, very similar question to this. He was asked publicly about why he left the church, what was wrong with the church and his parents to leave them and go to Islam. So maybe you can read books written by people who refer to Islam, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Maryam Jamila. There is a lot of sisters who also refer to Islam and wrote books. You might just try to find these books and read them. They will give you good answer.
If I may, I want to, this is a very good discussion, if I may want to add something to it. I think that if you're serious about your Islam, and I don't mean just wearing hijab and, showing off that you're a Muslim, like one day you're in the club, the next day you're dressed like Osama bin Laden. If you're serious about Islam in your character and in your relations, then, as the sister said, that over time, there will be, if not acceptance, at least a respect that this is the path that you have chosen. Not that they will become Muslims themselves necessarily, but they respect your choice to become Muslim, and they'll stop trying to feed you pork, and they'll stop trying to, sneak you something or get you involved in some situation that you don't want to be involved in. I want to mention this too. This very fundamental teaching of Islam. And that teaching uses the example of parents. It's in Surah Luqman, if I'm not mistaken. And it says, God says in the Quran, He says that if your parents, for example, if they make you jihad, if they make a jihad against you to get you to worship something that you know is not godly, like in other words, they try to force their religion on you. It says, do not obey them. Yet, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيا مَعْرُوفًا. Yet, at the same time, you keep your good relations with them. In other words, don't do what some people do. Don't let the religion be a source of, I'm gonna stay away from them. They're not believers. I'm gonna stay away from them. So don't let that dynamic enter into the relation. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I have a comment about that also. I just want to say that people who have raised you and people who are close to you, sometimes they're the hardest people on you and the changes that you make. And whether it's the faith that you choose to follow or the person you choose to marry or whatever school you go to, leaving home, all those kinds of things, you're going to have a problem somewhere because they have raised you and you're still their baby. And they still want you to do what they want you to do. So I mean, a lot of times it really is just the fact that you have to just be able to prove or say to that person that, you know, I'm responsible for my own choices now. You know, and as long as, and sometimes they do come to respect you more when they know that you're taking a stand for yourself. And sometimes you may have to reiterate to them that, you know, I still love you, I'm still that person that you raised, but this is the faith I choose to follow. And you have, you know, just the same thing that they said to you, but a lot of times you get, the people who have raised you and are the closest to you, you get the most flack from them for a lot of things. So I wouldn't take it too hard, especially coming from your granddad you said you're supposed to. I wouldn't take it too hard, and I would expect him to be like that about a lot of things.
Okay, so how about we have 2 more questions, and then, any more questions? Everyone's all out?
Just to add to my last point, from a statistical point of view, in America, there's 20,000 new Muslims every year, and the majority of them are women.
Yes.
In spite of all the negativeness, mentioned about them in the media and other places. That gives you something. Amina Benjamin also wrote in her book, she always said we are equal, but we are not the same. And she explained that in a very beautiful way. If you find any book, or go to online and find something about Amina Benjamin. She wrote a lot of nice stuff about her being a Muslim.
One other thing, and that's beautiful what you said, and the basketball player story is wonderful. For anyone who has teenage boys, you're blessed, first of all. Sometimes you don't realize it though. One of the things that I found is wonderful, my daughter lived in Chicago for a while, and there's a show on called The Dean Show.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah. Does everyone know about it?
Yes,
It's got
yes.
wonderful things that young boys, well, anybody, but particularly young boys, because they can relate to this guy, because this guy was a boxer. He was a playboy. He had money to burn, and gambling, and drugs, and everything else you can imagine. Turned himself around, and he has a wonderful. Now all you do on the computer is just dial in on Google, The Dean Show, and you'll see all the videos that he's ever made. He had the weekly show in Chicago.
The Dean Show.
The Dean Show.
The Dean Show.
The Dean Show.
D-E-E-N
Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
DeanShow.com.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful.
So, if there's nothing else, I would propose that we stop at this point. It's time for the afternoon appearance of the Asr. So, any visitors want to see us, we'll offer the prayer upstairs. So, is there anything else?
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're sure? Go ahead then. So, we'll pray the Asr prayer upstairs in the prayer hall. Haji Salman, go ahead.
رضيت